Okay, so here's the thing about Jimin that I have been thinking about for the last few days. And the more I think about it, the more I realize that what I am about to tell you has been sitting right in front of all of us this entire time. Hidden in plain sight. Woven into every interview, every Weber's post, every subtle moment that we watched and reacted to and then maybe filed away somewhere in the back of our minds without fully understanding what we were actually seeing. Because ParkJimin has been telling us about Ararang long before Ararang had a name. Long before there was an album announcement, a tracklist, a release date, or a Spotify campaign. He has been leaving breadcrumbs for months. And today I want to walk through every single one of them with you. Because when you line them all up together, the picture they form is breathtaking. And I think once you see it, you will not be able to unsee it. Let's start with something that a lot of people noticed but maybe did not give enough weight to at the time. In the months leading up to the Ararang announcement, Jimin was unusually quiet on social media. Not completely absent, but quieter than usual. Fewer posts. Fewer spontaneous Weverse updates. Fewer of those casual, unguarded moments that ARMY has come to love and depend on as a way of feeling connected to him between major releases. And at the time, a lot of people read that silence as rest. As recovery. As a natural exhale after years of relentless output. But looking back now, looking back through everything we know about what was being built during that silence, it reads completely differently. That silence was not emptiness. That silence was full. It was the silence of someone who was deep inside something, who was so consumed by the process of creating that there was no bandwidth left for surface-level communication. Jimin was not pulling away. He was going inward. He was doing the work that would eventually become Ararang. And the silence itself was the first clue. Because here is what you need to understand about how Jimin creates. He is not someone who can separate his art from his life. He never has been. Every project he has ever been a part of, every song, every performance, every visual, carries the fingerprints of exactly where he was emotionally and psychologically at the time it was made. He does not create from a distance. He creates from inside the experience. And that means that everything he was living through during that quiet period is now encoded somewhere in the DNA of Ararang. The silence was not a gap in the story. The silence was a chapter. Then there was the GQ interview. If you read it carefully, and I mean really carefully, not just the pull quotes that circulated on Twitter, Jimin said something that at the time felt like a general philosophical reflection but now reads as a very specific artistic statement. He talked about the idea of returning. Not returning to a place, but returning to a feeling. He said that one of the things he had been thinking about deeply was what it means to go back to something after you have changed, whether the thing itself changes to meet you, or whether you are the one who has to do the changing. Whether the return is a homecoming or a reckoning. At the time, people interpreted that as Jimin talking about coming back to performing after military service. Which is true. But it was also more than that. Because Ararang, the folk song, the concept, the centuries-old Korean melody that BTS chose as the name for this album is fundamentally a song about exactly that. About the journey back. About what you carry with you when you return. About whether home is a place or a feeling or a person or something inside yourself that you have been searching for without knowing what it was called. Jimin was not just talking about his personal experience in that GQ interview. He was describing the thesis of an album that had not yet been announced. He was telling us everything. And we were listening, but we did not yet have the key to understand what we were hearing. And then there was the Instagram story. You remember the one. The black and white photo that Jimin posted late at night with no caption. Just the image. A window. Rain on the glass. The reflection of a city lights blurred by water. No explanation, no hashtag, nothing. And ARMY spent hours analyzing it, theorizing about what it meant, whether it was a teaser or a personal moment or both. And at the time there was no definitive answer because Jimin gave none. But now that we know what Ararang sounds like in its earliest previewed forms, now that we have heard the sonic palette the album is working in, now that we have seen the visual language BTS is using for this era, that photo makes complete sense. It was not a teaser in the traditional marketing sense. It was Jimin processing something in real time and choosing to include us in that processing without explaining it to us. He was saying, look at what I am looking at right now. Feel what I am feeling right now. I cannot tell you why yet. But I want you to be here with me in this moment. And that instinct to reach toward Army even in his most private, unresolved moments, that is the beating heart of everything Ararang is about. Now let's talk about the Weverse post. Because this one I think is the most direct clue of all, and yet it is also the one that people most easily dismissed as casual fan communication. A few months ago, Jimin posted on Weverse just a short message, the kind he drops occasionally when something is on his mind. And what he said, roughly translated, was that he had been thinking about what music is actually for. Not what it does, not how it functions, but what it is for. Why it exists. Who it serves. And he answered his own question in a way that was so simple and so profound that I think a lot of people read it and thought, yes, that is a lovely sentiment, and then kept scrolling. But the answer he gave was this: music exists to make sure that no feeling ever dies alone. That every emotion a human being has ever experienced gets to find a companion somewhere, in a melody or a lyric or a rhythm, so that it does not have to exist in isolation. Read that again. Music exists to make sure that no feeling ever dies alone. That is not a casual Weverse update. That is an artist telling you exactly what they are trying to do with their work. That is Jimin handing you the mission statement for Ararang before the album even had a release date. He was telling you what he was building. He was telling you why he was building it. He was telling you who he was building it for. And all of it was right there on Weverse at whatever hour of the morning he decided to type it out and hit post. The breadcrumbs do not stop there. Think about the way Jimin talked about his solo work in the period leading up to the group comeback. He spoke about it in a very specific way. He said that making solo music taught him something about himself that he could not have learned any other way, and that what it taught him made him understand what BTS means in a way that went deeper than he had access to before. That the time alone gave him a perspective on the group that proximity had made impossible to see clearly. That is not a small statement. That is Jimin telling you that the chapters that looked like separation were actually preparation. That everything that happened, every individual journey, every personal project, every quiet year, was not a detour from BTS. It was the path that led back to BTS with more clarity, more intention, and more to give than ever before. Ararang is not BTS returning despite what happened in between. Ararang is BTS returning because of it. And Jimin understood that before anyone else was saying it publicly. And then of course there is the Spotify video. Decoding Ararang. Which if you have not watched yet, please, the moment this video ends, go open Spotify and find it immediately. Because in that video, Jimin does something that ties every single breadcrumb together into one coherent, devastating, beautiful thread. He talks about sitting alone in the studio in the middle of making this album and holding on to one image to get through the hardest moments. One person. Somewhere in the world. Headphones on. Finding something in the music that made them feel less alone. And when you hear that, when you hear him describe that image and then you go back through everything I just walked you through. The silence. The GQ interview about returning. The Instagram story with the rain and the city lights. The Weverse post about music making sure no feeling dies alone. The way he talked about solo work as preparation rather than separation. When you line all of it up and you hear Jimin say that this anonymous listener with their headphones on is what kept him going, you realize that he has been talking about that person the entire time. He has been making music for that person the entire time. And every clue he left along the way was not a clue about the album. It was a clue about you. He has been thinking about you. Through the silence and the rain photos and the late night Weverse posts and the honest interviews and the long studio sessions. The through line of all of it, the thing that connects every breadcrumb into a single coherent trail, is you. The listener. The person on the other side of the headphones. Army. You specifically, individually, personally you. Ararang drops March 20th, 7 days. And now you know that you have already been living inside this album for months without realizing it. Every time you wondered what Jimin was doing during the quiet period, you were already part of the story he was writing. Every time you saved a screenshot of a Weverse post or analyzed an Instagram story or read an interview twice because something in it felt important, you were following a trail that he laid down for you deliberately, with care, because he wanted you close to the process even when he could not show you the process directly. That is who ParkJimin is. That is what Arirang is. And that is why, when this album finally arrives and you press play for the first time, it is not going to feel like discovering something new. It is going to feel like coming home to something you have already been living in. Because in every way that matters, you already have been. Purple Heart.